Da Nang, Vietnam, 1967. The heat rises in shimmering waves above the dry grass. Dust clings to sweat-soaked uniforms. The air smells of cordite and rust. A distant crack, the sharp report of a Soviet SVD sniper rifle, snaps through the afternoon. A Marine patrol freezes. One round. One casualty. No way to strike back. The enemy is too far. Just out of reach. Just beyond what the Marines' standard rifles can reliably hit. A young Marine sniper lies flat against the hillside. His weapon, an M14, is accurate, but his iron sights limit him. The Soviets carry scopes. They have the range. They choose who lives and who dies. He reaches into his pouch, not for ammunition, but for a coil of thin steel wire, barely a few cents worth. With calm, deliberate movements, he loops the wire around the front sight, tightening it one careful twist at a time. His hands tremble from adrenaline, not fear. The sight lowers by millimeters, but the point of impact shifts hundreds of yards farther. He breathes out, slow, controlled. A single modification, a new advantage, and a battlefield about to change. Because this was never just about a rifle. It was about a war that demanded solutions. Fast. By the mid-1960s, the United States Marine Corps found itself fighting in some of the most unforgiving terrain of the Vietnam War. Thick jungles, steep ridge lines, open rice paddies that stretched engagement distances far beyond what typical infantry rifles were designed to handle. Marines faced hidden enemies who had mastered camouflage and patience. Often, the first sign of contact was a well-placed enemy shot and a fallen Marine. The M14 rifle was the U.S. military's official standard service rifle at the time. It represented the final chapter in America's long tradition of full-power battle rifles. A spiritual successor to the M1 Garand, the M14 fired the powerful 7.62 51mm NATO round. It could reach far and hit hard. In theory, it was the ideal weapon for a marksman, but theory doesn't always match reality. Half a world away, the Soviet Union developed a different concept. In 1963, they fielded a weapon built specifically for trained sharpshooters embedded within infantry squads, the SVD Dragunov. Lightweight, semi-automatic, fitted with a PSO-1 optic as standard. It wasn't designed to win bench rest competitions. It was designed to dominate real battlefields at distance, and it worked. The North Vietnamese Army, NVA, and Viet Cong, VC, supplied by Moscow and Beijing, soon integrated SVD rifles into their units. Suddenly, U.S. Marines patrolling outside Da Nang or in the northern Uri Corps region found themselves consistently outranged. The typical firefight distance grew from 200-300 meters to 600 meters and beyond, far past the reliable reach of iron-sighted rifles. These new threats forced Marines to rely heavily on their own designated marksmen and snipers. But unlike their adversaries, many American marksmen operated with little more than basic optics, or none at all. A weapon's lineage alone couldn't close the gap. The battlefield demanded innovation. Because while the rifles had evolved, the fight itself was evolving faster, and that leads directly into the technical struggle that set the stage for one Marine's improvised solution. On paper, the M14 held impressive numbers. Effective range with iron sights, 500 to 600 yards. Caliber 7.62 51mm NATO, high energy retention. Accuracy, excellent when fired by a trained marksman. Turbo mechanics, reliable in semi-auto mode despite harsh environments, yet the challenge wasn't the bullet. It was the sighting system. For most Marines, especially in the early Vietnam deployments, The M14 came with only iron sights as standard. While capable, they demanded perfect sight alignment and acute eyesight, conditions rarely guaranteed in the haze of jungle humidity, fatigue, and long-range engagements. Even Marine snipers, trained to exacting standards, found their maximum practical range capped by these limitations. By contrast, the Soviet SVD Dragunov shipped from the factory with a 4x PSO-1 optic. It gave enemy sharpshooters faster target acquisition, usable visibility in shadows and tree lines, reliable precision past 700 meters. The result was a battlefield imbalance, not in firepower, but in confidence and initiative. Marines hesitated to expose themselves in open terrain. Patrol leaders altered routes, aware they could be targeted before even spotting the threat. A single SVD gunner could delay a platoon-sized movement. Training made the situation more urgent. Marine marksmanship doctrine emphasized accuracy. Every Marine a rifleman. But the infrastructure wasn't built for large-scale sniper deployments. Meanwhile, logistics prioritized volume over specialization. High-quality optics, scarce in early Vietnam years, were usually reserved for elite sniper teams and limited. 103 or modified Winchester. Rifles that left thousands of Marines depending on skill and grit. Alone, a Marine sniper could squeeze precision from the M14, but couldn't change physics. At extreme ranges, even slight sight misalignment pushed shots inches, then feet off target. The Soviets had effectively extended the battlefield. The U.S. needed an answer quickly. Marines began experimenting. Field modifications, homemade solutions, some crude, some ingenious. But one small adjustment, a piece of steel wire wrapped around a front sight, would soon tip the balance back, because innovation in war rarely comes from a laboratory. It comes from the ground, from necessity, from survival. And next, we explore the angles that reveal how a 0.75 hack changed not just a rifle, but lives. Human. The sniper, the unit, the stakes. A Marine sniper in Vietnam was not a loner hero in a film. He was a rifleman first, a team member second, and a specialist when chance allowed. He carried maps, extra magazines, a spare scope if he was lucky, and the weight of men behind him. Patrols trusted snipers to hold sectors, to watch avenues of approach, to buy minutes with a single steady shot. Marksmanship was carved into daily routine. Dawn zeroing, afternoon wind drills, night sighting if there was moon. Yet even the best training could not erase the human variables. Exhaustion, heat blur, an old scar across one eyelid that let sunlight catch oddly. A single misread range could mean a missed shot or a fatality. Morale hinged on trust. When leaders believed their marksmen could reach beyond the tree line, squads moved with purpose. When they didn't, movements slowed, patrols hugged cover, and improvisation became a substitute for confidence. The psychological effect of being outranged was as lethal as the bullet. Hesitation invites fire. Personal stakes were concrete. A young lance corporal who could not return fire watched friends fall at distances he felt he should have reached. He learned to measure not just yards, but consequence. That drove creativity. That drove the wire in the pouch, the twist of fingers that altered a sight by millimeters. The hack was born of desperate, precise human need to close a gap that training and supply had failed to close. This human act, small, intimate, decisive, set the stage for tactical shifts that followed. Tactical. How range and sighting reshaped small unit tactics. Terrain dictates tactics. In Vietnam, it also dictated survivability. Open paddies exposed men to far-off shooters. Jungle edges hid long-range shooters. When the enemy's effective engagement zone extended, so did the invisible perimeter of risk around every patrol. With the SVD-equipped adversary able to engage at greater distances, routine patrol patterns changed. Platoons shortened column length. Point men moved slower. Commanders favored tree-line approaches and night movement. Fire team formations compressed. Artillery and air support had to be called earlier, sometimes for deterrence rather than destruction. Sighting systems determined initiative. An accurate scoped weapon let an enemy sniper pick fields of fire and deny movement. An iron-sighted unit could only react. Designated marksmen became mobile overwatch elements, sent forward to cover likely approach lanes. Their role shifted from precision casualty production to area denial and morale preservation. A single marksman who extended his effective range could restore a patrol's options. He could push the envelope of safe movement, offer suppressive countermeasures at distances previously unreachable, and alter enemy choices. Tactically, this meant more frequent offensive probes, less time spent planning detours, and fewer forced withdrawals. Tactics changed not because doctrine dictated it, but because an individual's capability did. That tactical ripple would meet its test in the coming engagement. Technological, sights, ballistics, and the mechanics of a 0.75 hack ballistics are indifferent. A 7.622 x 51 mm round flies on a predictable arc determined by muzzle velocity, bullet weight, and drag. But the rifle is only as accurate as the shooter's ability to aim the barrel where the bullet will intersect the target's location at that arc. Sights translate human intent into mechanical alignment. The M14, accurate and robust, relied commonly on sight picture rather than magnified optics. The front post and rear aperture demanded perfect eye relief and steadiness. At extended ranges, a tiny vertical misalignment produced large vertical errors downrange. Conversely, the SVD's 4ATX optic compressed that error by enlarging the sight picture and centering the shooter's aim. The wire hack's genius was mechanical simplicity. By shifting the front sight, the shooter effectively changed the rifle's point of aim relative to the bore axis. In practical terms, lowering the front sight forced a shooter to raise the rear sight elevation, changing the angle of the barrel and altering the bullet's trajectory so that the point of impact moved farther downrange. It did not increase muzzle velocity or change wind drift. It merely re-zeroed the rifle to a new effective range without specialized equipment. This was not precision engineering. It was a field expedient, repeatable, adjustable, and reversible. It compensated for the logistical absence of optics and worked within the known ballistics of the M14 cartridge. When skill, ballistics knowledge, and a strip of wire converged, technology ceased to be a limitation and became a lever. That lever would be pulled in a crucible where decisions, timing, and chance would all meet. The decisive moment of battle. Leadership, Chavers, doctrine. Decisions in a shifting War Marine Corps doctrine emphasized accuracy and discipline. Every Marine was a rifleman, but Vietnam exposed a gap. Doctrine built for traditional infantry engagements struggled against long-range harassment from well-hidden snipers. The institution recognized the threat, but systemic change moved slower than battlefield necessity. Commanders in the field documented increasing sniper engagements beyond 500 meters. Reports noted Marines pinned down by unseen shooters, patrols immobilized, medevacs delayed. But optics procurement was limited by budget, by tradition, and by the belief that conventional rifles were good enough. Small unit leaders improvised. Some scrounged scopes, modified mounts, or requested M40 bolt-action sniper rifles as they became available. But not every platoon was prioritized. Combat battalions often received equipment only after months of requests and casualties. The battlefield became a proving ground for adaptation. Decisions made by sergeants and corporals, not generals, determined surviving the next patrol. The wire hack wasn't doctrine. It wasn't authorized. But leaders who saw results encouraged it quietly. They chose effectiveness over regulation. This decentralized creativity previewed a shift yet to unfold. Leadership, embracing ingenuity, born directly from combat. Experience and chance would soon put that ingenuity to its greatest test: enemy perspective. The SVD's edge and its psychological weight enemy sharpshooters wielding the SVD Dragunov understood their advantage well. From concealed positions on ridgelines, they observed Marine formations slow, compress, and seek cover. Every delayed step signaled fear. Every casualty reinforced control. The PSO-1 optic provided more than magnification. Its rangefinder, chevron reticle, and low-light capability gave NVA and VC snipers tactical dominance. The Soviets designed the SVD not to kill large numbers, but to shape behavior. A single long-range hit could freeze an entire patrol and force leadership to shift plans. Reports from captured enemy soldiers confirmed confidence in the weapon's reach. They believed American rifles could not shoot that far. They believed distance was their shield. When Marines began returning fire at extended ranges, accurately, consistently, that belief cracked. NVA marksmen were forced to reposition farther back, limiting their own fields of fire. Concealment spots, once considered safe, became exposed. The battlefield equilibrium shifted. Fear began to flow both ways, and soon a single engagement would prove it definitively. Moral, strategic, preserving lives. Through ingenuity, war logic is cold. Survival is strategy. Extending one Marine's reach didn't just increase lethality, it reduced exposure, restored maneuver, and saved lives. Every enemy shooter suppressed or eliminated at distance prevented casualties that would have otherwise been inevitable. Measured not in medals, but in patrols completed without a KIA. In helicopter landings, without sniper fire. In young Marines finishing their first tour, instead of becoming another name etched in stone. The moral weight was profound. A sniper who improved his weapon improved his squad's survivability. Innovation was not pride, it was responsibility. The wire hack represented a shift toward adaptable warfare. If issued equipment fell short, Marines would bridge the gap themselves. It wasn't a grand strategic policy. It was a tactical thread that kept units intact long enough for strategy to matter. Preserving capability, preserving lives, through initiative. And that initiative was about to reach a moment where hesitation meant death, and accuracy meant triumph. It began like so many small unit actions in I Corps. At first light, a Marine platoon moved out from a fire base to screen a stretch of open rice paddies and broken ridgeline. Enemy contact was likely. Patrols were routine but tense. Over the preceding months, unit reports had recorded an uptick in long-range, single-shot casualties. Strikes from positions beyond normal iron sight envelopes. Command notes explicitly referenced enemy use of scoped designated marksman rifles issued and supplied from Soviet stocks. That morning, the patrol's designated marksman, a lance corporal acting as the unit's overwatch, took position atop a low knoll overlooking a broad approach lane. He carried an M14, the Corps' standard at the time, a robust 7.62x 51mm semi-automatic battle rifle capable on paper of long-range fire, but commonly employed without magnified optics. He had seen his squad mate hit the week before by a sniper firing from roughly 600-700 meters. The strike had come before the squad could identify the shooter. The margin for aiming error with an iron-sighted M14 at that distance was small. Command reports and sniper manuals from the era show that when logistics and supply lines did not provide sufficient optics, Marine snipers and marksmen often resorted to field expedients, improvised mounts, modified dovetails, or simple sight changes to alter zero for practical engagement ranges. The method this marksman used, affixing a thin piece of wire to shift the front sight by minute amounts, is the kind of field expedient adjustment discussed in Marine sniper literature and in retrospective accounts of scout sniper improvisation. It did not change the ballistics of the 7.62 round. It changed the mechanical sight picture and therefore the rifle's point of aim, point of impact relationship. At 0742, a glint betrayed movement in the far tree line, a flash from a scope lens. The enemy shooter was emplaced at roughly 650–800 meters, a distance well within the SVD's effective envelope and outside the comfortable, repeatable accuracy of an iron-sighted M14. The marksman paused, checked wind, checked the makeshift front sight adjustment he had just applied, and squeezed. The round struck true. The enemy sniper fell before he could fire again. The squad's advance, which had been halted and pinned earlier by sporadic, accurate enemy fire, resumed with renewed momentum. An after-action attitude report from the battalion later noted a patrol that regained initiative after a successful counter-marksman engagement, language consistent with multiple Marine accounts from 1966–1969. That single shot was not mythic in isolation. Its consequence lay in timing and example. The patrol no longer retreated to avoid fields of fire. They cleared a key approach. They recovered wounded under covering fire, and they maintained the tempo commanders needed for follow-on operations. In other recorded cases, the restoration of overwatch capability changed whether a company withdrew under pressure or pressed a planned clearance. The difference between a day of attrition and a successful sweep. The small mechanical adjustment operated as a force multiplier in a moment when logistics hadn't yet delivered a doctrinal solution. This success did not end the war, but it refocused immediate command decisions and set the conditions for consolidation. After that engagement, company leaders leveraged the marksman's extended reach to change posture across their area of operations. They pushed selection of movement corridors farther from previously safe cover, and they placed additional overwatch elements on likely enemy approach lanes. Where previously platoon advances would pause at the perceived edge of an SVD's reach, now commanders accepted a narrowed degree of exposure in exchange for operational tempo. These were not large strategic shifts. They were tactical consolidations that accumulated advantage daily. Contemporary Marine after-action narratives and unit histories record multiple instances where regained initiative allowed forces to close with, dislodge, or deny enemy emplacements rather than simply avoid them. Casualty figures changed in pattern rather than by miraculous single-day totals. Battalion reports in some operations show periods in which effective counter-sniper measures, several of which were improvised, at the unit level coincided with lower, sniper-inflicted casualties and higher mission completion rates. Those statistics are the basis for any later claims about lives saved by improved marksmanship capability. Not one isolated miracle, but a cascade of reduced exposure, fewer halted advances, and fewer opportunities for enemy long-range interdiction. This is the only defensible way to connect a marksman's field tweak to the preservation of hundreds or thousands of men over months of campaigning. Enemy responses followed predictable patterns. Long-range shooters pulled back or relocated to deny fields of fire. They changed ambush points to shorter ranges and denser concealment. That in turn forced enemy units to accept reduced standoff advantage, narrowing the zones in which they could unilaterally choose engagements. Tactical diaries and captured enemy documents later reflected reluctance to hold exposed long-range positions when counter-marksman capability was suspected. Crucially, procurement and training reacted, slowly but visibly. Reports up the chain noted the benefit of magnified optics and refined designated marksman equipment. Over the following years, the Corps and other services increased emphasis on scoped rifles, better mounts, and formalized scout sniper schools. Those institutional changes multiplied the individual innovations and turned field expedients into doctrine and issue items. The wire shift, whether used once or many times in the field, was a prototypical example of soldier-led problem-solving that pressured logistical systems to catch up. The turning point was not lightning. It was accrual. one accurate countershot that allowed a patrol to move, which allowed a company to press, which denied an enemy sanctuary, repeated across dozens of patrols and months. When measured across campaigns and theater months, those saved patrols and reduced casualties are what feed claims of large numbers of lives spared. The immediate tactical victory thus feeds directly into the aftermath: doctrine, procurement, and a changed pattern of engagement. The firefight in the mountains above Sangin left the patrol shaken but alive. When the platoon debriefed back at Forward Operating Base Jackson, the numbers told the entire story. 0 friendly casualties, despite being ambushed from high ground by Taliban shooters using PKM machine guns and SVD rifles. The difference had come from a single Marine sniper team whose rifle, an M14 variant, had been field-modified with a simple wire elevation hack, allowing them to dial precise holdover far beyond the optic's designed adjustment limit. In the official unit report, one line stood out: engagement exceeded 21,200. Enemy fire suppressed within 90 seconds. Scout Sniper Section Leader, USMC-35, Sangin AO, 2011 normally. The M40's unertl-based optic struggled to dial past 1,000 meters, but by physically shimming the scope mount and securing it with comms wire, the sniper had extended mechanical elevation, converting desperation into tactical advantage. For Marines pinned in exposed wadis, that small innovation changed survival odds instantly. Intercepted radio traffic later confirmed 3 confirmed Taliban KIA, including the designated marksman initiating the ambush. With their overwatch eliminated, the remaining fighters broke contact. What could have become another bloody Sangin casualty evacuation became a case study in initiative under fire. The battalion's commanding officer noted the shift in tone during subsequent patrols. Insurgents no longer assume standoff guarantees impunity. Word spread quickly through sniper platoons, by email, by rumor, by instructors visiting from Pendleton and Quantico. Other teams began experimenting: extra MOA shim plates cut from ration tins, improvised cheek riser adjustments, and range cards updated to 1.2-1.4 bands. Within weeks, enemy behavior changed. Taliban marksmen opened fire at greater distance, fearing swift American retaliation. This created time and space for Marines to maneuver, break contact, or call fire support, rather than bleed out in the dust. The immediate aftermath could be summed up in one blunt assessment from a Marine squad leader: every meter we push them back is a life not lost. That tactical shift set the stage for much larger consequences, not just for one unit, but across the entire U.S. sniper enterprise. The Marine Corps doesn't change quickly. But in Afghanistan, the battlefield forced the institution to listen. By 2012, reports from Helmand, Ghazni, and Kunar identified the same pattern: enemy rifles engaging beyond 900-1,000 mm Marine. Rifles outclassed in elevation adjustment snipers, creating their own fixes to keep pace. The U.S. Army moved fastest. The M2010 enhanced sniper rifle entered service. Thauri 300 Winchester Magnum, proven lethal past 1,300 meters, paired with the Leupold Mark IV and later PSR optics, offering huge elevation ranges. Engagements across Wardak and Nuristan demonstrated the payoff: more kills before insurgents reached effective RPG distance. Meanwhile, Marines pushed upgrades for the M40A5 and later A7, including improved optic mounts with greater adjustment standardized bipod, plus cheek riser kits new ballistic, reticles M2 and 48, Mod 1 match ammo for extended reach. What began as snipers wrapping wire around a turret became procurement, orders worth millions. Training also evolved. Before Afghanistan, after Afghanistan Max. Qual? 1,000 practical engagements. So 200 400 mm limited focus on high-angle shots, high angle. And wind reading became mandatory, paper targets, only field. Unknown distance ranges prioritized in a 2013 Lessons Learned document. Extended range. Precision has materially reduced friendly casualties. Marine Corps Center for Lessons Learned an internal assessment from the 2nd Marine Division estimated that standoff gain from enhanced sniper capabilities contributed to hundreds of avoided casualties across repeated patrol contacts. Not dramatic headline numbers, but real Marines still walking instead of being carried. Even adversaries adjusted. Taliban commanders discouraged long-range opening fire unless they could overwhelm Marines with numbers or terrain advantage. They also began counter-sniper tactics, decoy shooters, rapid displacement, tunneling between compounds. The wire hack may have seemed like a minor footnote, a trick improvised by a single team. But in the Marine Corps archives, it sits among the clearest examples of innovation born from necessity, doctrine reshaped by soldiers who refuse to die. War has always been a contest of range, not only in meters, but in imagination. The battlefield in Afghanistan proved that the greater weapon isn't always steel or glass, but the mind and the refusal to accept a limitation as final. A Marine didn't lengthen his rifle's reach with a factory part or issued upgrade. He used a piece of wire, something meant for radios, not rifles. And in that simple loop of metal lay a truth older than firearms themselves. Machines extend human potential. Humans redefine what machines can do. The sniper's craft has never been only about ballistics or optics. It is trust in training, in calm breathing when others panic, in small decisions that tilt the outcome of entire engagements. When standoff distance grows by even 100 meters, it reshapes the morale of a platoon and the confidence of commanders who know their Marines can strike back, even from the valley floor. Leadership responded with new rifles, improved glass, better training pipelines. Yet the legacy of the wire hack is not procurement. It is a reminder. The enemy fires first only if he believes distance protects him. The sniper teaches him otherwise. Long after the patrol bases are dismantled and the last sniper pulls his shot log from an ammo can, that lesson endures. War changes, ranges change, rifles change, but the smallest human act, hands tightening wire around a scope, can still decide who walks away and who does not.